So here I was, thinking I had it all made now. My best girl by my side, Lucky knocked off by his own guy. America was finally looking like the land of opportunity, you know? Thinking about expansion and all that. But then some big named Walla walks into my home, interrupts my moment, and says I work for her now? What the is this? Might as well have taken a on my doorstep. Turns out old Lucky was working with the G-Men the whole time. I always knew it was a fink, but now that I just became the Big Apple's #1, I'm expected to take over where Lucky left off. They say everyone gets pinched eventually, but this is just some goddamn grade A American.
Please, stop. We're gonna get demonetized.
Like I give a rat's
Ahem. It had been 3 weeks since Cauliflower and Kale were drafted into Amanda Waller's Bombshells. With Lucky Luciano dead, his control over the city docks fell into Cauliflower's hands, and as such, the back-channel deal between the United States government and the Mafia now fell on her shoulders to uphold. With the US now involved in what was once considered yet another European conflict, now became a full-scale world war. German aggression and espionage was a major concern to the US, with the American Navy still limping after the events of Pearl Harbor. The government couldn't afford any attacks on the eastern seaboard, so a deal was struck between the organized crime empires of New York and the American government. Keep the docks running smoothly and guard against any Nazi attacks, and the government will look the other way about all illegal activity. At first, Cauliflower refused to have anything to do with the feds, but Amanda Waller was nothing if not persuasive.
Listen close, you may think you're the toughest thing in town, you might even be on the money, but if you're still licking your wounds from my tattoo man, you don't want to know what else I've got in my back pocket. So as I see it, you've got 2 options. Either join up and become my Bombshells, or get ready to take all of them at once while I rain down the full force of the United States government on top of your cute little neighborhood. I'm accustomed of getting what I want, so one way or another, someone will watch the docks for me. Be smart, girl. Make sure it's you.
The prospect of fighting a bunch of super strong warriors like Richards didn't scare Cauliflower. Honestly, that part sounded exciting. But she had people to protect, and knew the kind of trouble the feds could bring to her borough. So, she agreed to keep the deal Lucky made going. All things considered, it wasn't too bad. Her and Kale could operate without having to look over their shoulder, and it gave them some new heads to crack if any goose-stepping Nazis tried anything around the docks. Their first few nights of guard duty were pretty busy. Word of Lucky's demise had spread quickly, even to the Nazi spy network, and so the docks were seen as a soft target. But while word of Lucky's death had gotten out, Cauliflower and Kale taking over had not. So the first few attempts by Nazi infiltrators were met with crushing defeats at the hands of the Saiyans. While Kale was normally rather reserved in fights, she seemed to go a lot harder when faced with these Nazi spies. At first, Cauliflower hadn't really noticed, but the sound of a grown man crying was enough to make her look over at Kale. The sight of her girlfriend holding a crying Nazi by the throat while repeatedly smashing him against a wall certainly did things for her, but it was undeniably out of character.
Kale, dollface, what's got into ya? And can I have some? Not that I mind or anything, but you usually stop when they stop bleeding. Something wrong?
I'm sorry. It's just I really hate these guys. I know you don't pay much attention to the news, but it's like that awful Willis woman gone past the limit.
Oh, don't tell me you've been listening to that Leslie Willis on the Squawk Box again.
No. Well, a little.
Oh, ain't that just a kick in the head? How many times I gotta tell ya? Listen to that garbage ain't gonna do you any good.
I know, it's just, I get scared. The way she talks about people, she even
She what?
She said that the cops need to move in and clean up our borough. Said that migrant scum had taken it over.
Listen real close. Ain't no cop, no G-man, no radio bitch, no Nazi, ain't nobody taking what's ours, okay? No matter whose clock we gotta clean, no Tom, Dick, or Harry gonna take our home, you hear?
Yeah. You always know what to say.
With the dock secure for another night, Cauliflower put one of the neighborhood kids back on watch. Kale held her girlfriend's hand tightly all the way home as they flew back to their apartment above the Reaping Bar. The next morning, the pair were woken up by a knock on their door, followed by a meek voice.
Miss Khalifa? I was just wondering if I could get my ring back now. It's been almost a month and I'm kind of needed out in the galaxy.
Cabba, I boosted it fair and square. You want it back so badly, you're gonna have to take it. Can you believe this kid, Kale? Thinks I'm just gonna hand over such a lovely piece of merchandise. Besides, I got plans for this beauty.
I don't know if you can have something fair and square if you stole it, Khalifa. What are you planning to do with it anyhow?
I'm glad you asked, 'cause there's something I've been meaning to chat with you about.
Fine! You want me to take it? Then here I come!
Ah, nuts.
Cabba burst through the door and came flying for Cauliflower. She had just enough time to get her guard up, but the Saiyan warrior still managed to muster up more strength than she was ready for, as he tackled her out of the apartment's window. The two came crashing onto the bar floor, after rolling around a few tables, that is. Cauliflower shoved Cabba away as the two warriors stood up to face each other. In all the excitement of the attack, Cabba hadn't realized that his opponent wasn't fully dressed. His face became flushed as he averted his eyes. It took Cauliflower a moment to realize why her opponent was looking away, before she noticed herself. She called up Kale to help throw her coat down.
You better leave Khalifa alone!
It's alright, Kale. Cabba here just needs a little lesson in manners. Besides, no better way to start the day than with a brawl.
With that, the two Saiyans began to throw punches and kicks inside the empty bar. The tables seemed surprisingly sturdy given they were able to hold up to this intense level of combat. With a shocking burst of strength, Cabba managed to lift Cauliflower and throw her behind the bar top. When she didn't pop back up right away, he was concerned that he may have actually hurt her. But then the gangster shot up while swinging an entire bottle of alcohol.
Oh, you're finally getting serious then. Mind if I ask you a question? Ever heard of a Super Saiyan?
She didn't wait for a response as she flew across the bar and hit Cabba square in his chest, pushing him out of the bar doors and into the streets of New York. The power behind the blast was making it clear that Cabba was outclassed here. This fight was not going to last long.
You see, the reason I ask is because I met one recently. Ain't been on Sadala in years now. Not since I kept getting in fights and Kale here kept blowing a gasket. His Highness didn't much like that, so he kicked us to the curb. Fine by me, though. Got some real fighters here in New York. But I just gotta know, any of you pansies back home managed to crack the Super Saiyan thing?
No?
Thought not. Well, I think your dance card's up from the looks of things. You ain't without this ring.
Cabba knew she was right. As powerful as he was, Cauliflower had always been ahead of the pack on their planet, a prodigy, and that Kale girl seemed even scarier somehow. On top of that, they had broken their limits here on Earth, growing more powerful than any other Saiyan on Sadala. But Cabba wasn't going to just give up. Even without his ring, he was a Green Lantern, and that meant he couldn't let fear control him. So the Saiyan stood tall and prepared to rush at his opponent one more time, with everything he had. But as he began to charge, a red cloud surrounded Cauliflower. The gangster began to cough and tried to move away from it, but the cloud followed her around the street. Cabba rushed over to try and help, but just as he got close, Kale came running out of the bar and pinned him to the wall.
Whatever you're doing to her, Stop it! Now!
It's not me. We were in the middle of a fight, and all of a sudden, this happened.
Kale looked the Saiyan in the eye and could see the genuine confusion on his face. She dropped him and rushed over to Cauliflower, who could not escape the cloud. She flew up into the air to try and get away, but no matter what, it followed her. Finally, it became too much. Cauliflower felt lightheaded and fell to the ground. Kale barely managed to catch her. Now that she was free from the gas, the gangster began to cough up and was able to take in some much needed breaths.
Guess I let her out early. Not a problem. Next time, I'll be more patient.
The red cloud of energy began to take a vaguely human shape down on the street as it talked, until finally, everything condensed down and all that was left was a woman with a wicked smile on her face.
The name's Ada. I'm a federal agent, and I take my job very seriously. When terrorists threaten my nation, I stop them in their tracks. Watch as I duel with my adversaries in Kythera Zero.
Okay, who's gonna make the bottom side of my shoe?
Suppose you deserve to know who's gonna take over from Queen Kong. Name's Good. Robinson Good. Here you bumped off Lucky and took over for him. Way I see it, New York needs to be controlled by local talent, not some girls from who knows where. Face it, honey, you don't deserve to rule these streets. You weren't even born here.
I'm done with this.
Oh, come on, she got the drop on me. Let me at her.
She nearly killed you.
With a burst of speed, Kale shot across the street towards Good. Before anyone else could tell what happened, Kale's fist was through Red Cloud's head. But that was the tricky part. Kale's fist went through a head of red vapor, and nothing else. Good began to dematerialize again, and surround Kale in mere seconds. The Saiyan began to raise her energy, and pushed the cloud away in all directions. She started to fire bolts of energy around into the cloud, but they merely passed through without any effect. Good's voice rang out in a laugh, as she began to twist and pick up speed around the Saiyan.
Think you can just walk into our town and take over like we're nothing? I've been running these streets and boroughs here for years. You expect me to just turn over and start listening to some foreigners cause you took out Luciano? Nah, I've put in the work. After I strangle the two of you, I'll be the one running this town.
Kale found herself lifted up in a tornado of red vapor. She was spinning around uncontrollably and couldn't keep her energy focused outward. She tried to redirect it and fly out of the tornado, but the vortex was unnaturally strong. From the sidewalk, Cauliflower and Cabba looked on. The gangster tried to help by shooting blasts of energy into the red vapor, but they were useless.
I need the ring.
Now is not the time, Cabba.
I have a plan, but I need my ring back.
No dice. I need it for something.
What could you possibly need it for?
It's important, okay? I ain't giving it up.
Dueling wheels detected. Implementing clone protocol.
Suddenly, the green lantern ring on Cauliflower's finger lit up in a blinding flash of energy as it duplicated itself, producing a second ring that flew to Cabba's finger. The Green Lantern and the gangster shared a look, each of them acknowledging the surprise brought on by this development. But there was no time to dwell on it, as Kale was running out of time. The vortex was dying down, but only because Red Cloud was beginning to force her way into the Saiyans' lungs.
I'm all ears on that so-called plan. It's ready to spit it out already.
Right. I can make something that can contain her. We just need to find a way to funnel her into it.
Leave me with the difficult part, why don't ya? Why, I oughta. Hey, Kale, Hang in there, baby doll. This is gonna sound like I flipped my wig, but don't fight it. Let it in.
Kale looked down at her girlfriend in shock, but trusted her. With a massive inhale, Kale sucked all of the red cloud into her lungs, finally allowing her to float down to the ground. Cabba came rushing up to her and formed the giant pickle jar in front of Kale's face as Cauliflower ran around her and gripped her girlfriend around the waist. With a massive amount of pressure, the gangster squeezed with all her might as Kale forcefully blew as hard as she could. The girl's unorthodox method was enough to force red cloud out of Kale's body and into the construct, which Cabba quickly sealed up before she could escape. The three Saiyans, each breathing heavily in a combination of both relief and exhaustion.
Why a pickle jar?
You have one at your bar. I couldn't get it open. In the moment, I needed to think of the most impossible thing to open I could, and, well, that was it.
Oh no! That's really funny.
They brought the construct back to the bar, and Cauliflower couldn't help herself from her new idea, despite Cabba's concerns. She opened the real pickle jar at the end of the bar, dumped out the contents, and placed it over Cabba's construct. The Green Lantern formed an airtight seal between the two vessels, and then allowed Good to move between them. He was sure this was a bad idea, but Cauliflower quickly removed the jar and slammed the lid back on, sealing it tight. Good began to swirl and twist within the jar, bashing around, trying to escape.
You're so stupid. I'll be out of here in a second.
I ain't so sure. You wanna know where you f***ed up? You might be able to sneak up on us and get all kinds of strong moving us around outside, but the tighter the space you squeeze into, the weaker you got. And before you dream of switching outfits back to your human look, think real hard about whether or not you can break this jar before it breaks your bones.
With a sadistic twist, Cauliflower grabbed the jar and dropped it on the bar floor. However, it simply bounced on the ground with a large thud. Red Cloud began to scream from within the jar as it rolled across the floor, but her voice was muffled at best. Cauliflower tried to go over and check in on her partner, but Cabba interrupted her.
You're getting under my skin, Cabba. You got your ring back now, right? So buzz off.
Something you said today, though. I realized you were right. I like being a Green Lantern. I'm good at it. But I'm useless without the ring. But you two, you're unstoppable. I mean, did you even need my help today?
At first, Cauliflower wanted to shoot him down and say no. But then she looked over at Kale and remembered how worried she'd been when her baby doll was struck in the red vortex. Maybe she'd have thought of something in time, but there was no denying that Cabba actually did.
Listen, Cabba, you weren't bad out there, you know? You're alright. For a cop.
Thanks. But I want to be better. Please, help me get stronger.
I'll sleep on it. Stick around for the time being, yeah? Need someone to tend the bar anyway. You done yakking my ear off? I gotta go take care of my girl.
Cauliflower rushed over to her girlfriend, who was busy cleaning up around the bar. But as she got closer, she could hear a voice over the radio.
And reports are coming in about another brawl in Migrant Town. It makes me sick, ladies and gentlemen. Sick to know that our great nation, who so welcomes these lesser races in, has to put up with the destruction and violence they bring. Reminds me of what's going on out west. Ask the so-called loyal citizens of yellow descent to make a small sacrifice for the safety of our nation, and how do they repay us? Staging riots and breakouts. How long till the migrants over on this side of the country do the same? Or worse? I tell ya, if the authorities refuse to stop it, it's gonna have to take good-natured people to roll up their sleeves and do the right thing. I say we go kick in the doors and windows down there and show those immigrant criminal scum whose land they're on.
I'm sorry, Khalifa. I know you don't like it when I listen to that Willis woman.
I ain't mad at you, baby doll. But if that loudmouth wants a rumble, I'll give her one.
Hey all, if you enjoyed this, then be sure to head on over to our Patreon to help support the team. With your help, we can get more actors like the fantastic crew of this episode, some more art, and even some animations. There's a ton of fun perks, including access to episodes early. So thank you all for the support, and as always, take it easy folks.